All right, hey team, welcome to another Bullpen Bulletin with Coach Hart and Building Better Baseball. Today we are talking about how to hit with runners on base. So if you're a hitter and there's nobody on base, you're going to be kind of have a different approach than if there were runners on base. You have different jobs and kind of different ideal hits and places on the field where you should hit it. So today we're talking about how to hit with runners on base. And again, I'm Coach Hart. This is Building Better Baseball, the best place for baseball education. So let's get into how to hit with runners on base. All right, the first one is we should always know the situation. This is the number one priority, if not just hitting the ball, which is what I say here actually. If hitting the ball is your number one priority, then knowing the situation is priority number 1A. So obviously hitting the ball is number one, but knowing the situation is how many runners are on. So knowing the situation includes how many runners are on. So are there two, three, one, whatever, what bases they are on. So if there's a runner on third, you would have a different approach than if there was a runner on first only, right? And how many outs there are. So how many outs dictate what kind of approach you're going to have at the plate, right? And this should all be figured out when you're in the hole or on deck. All right, so you don't want to be trying to figure out the situation as you're approaching and getting into the batter's box, because once you're in the batter's box, all you want to worry about is hitting the ball, right? So when you're in the hole and on deck, that is your time to survey the field, learn how many outs there are. Okay, there's a runner on here. This is the situation. So that's your time to figure out the situation, is when you're in the hole or on deck, not when you are stepping into the batter's box. All right. Now, your job with runners on base. Besides trying to get on base yourself, your number one job when you're hitting with runners on base is just to get them to the next base safely. So if they're on first, you're trying to get them to second safely, and second to third, third to home, right? So you're just trying to advance the runners safely. And this is only with less than two outs. Because if there are two outs, then you're really just trying to get on base yourself, right? Because if there's two outs, it doesn't matter where you hit it. If there's an out, then that's the end of the inning, right? Whereas if there is less than two outs, you could still get out and accomplish your goal of moving the runners, right? So this is only with less than two outs where you're trying to move them to the next base safely. If there's two outs, you're just trying to get on base. Now, before we go any further, this video is about ideal situations. So your ideal situations or ideal hits or your perfect hits or whatever, right? I totally understand that hitting the ball where you want is very hard to accomplish. And so I want to say that first before we go into anything else. I understand that hitting a baseball in itself is hard, but also trying to place it into the field exactly where you want, that's nearly impossible, right? Obviously people do it, but it is very hard, and I understand that and I recognize that. So I just wanted to say that before we move on. So with a runner on first or first and second, all right, so when you have a runner on first or first and second only, the runners are in a force play situation where if you hit a ground ball, all the defense needs to do is tag the base that they're running to and they would be out, right? So they are in a force play situation. Your ideal hit is a hit to the right side of the field, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, right? So lefty, you would pull it. Righty, you would hit it oppo. Ideally is a line drive or a ground ball through the right side of the infield, like in between first and second base. That is your ideal hit, because that is hitting behind the runner. And that's kind of a theme that I want you to notice, is that if you have a runner on first or first and second where there's a force play, you want to hit behind the runner, because the defense has to do a lot more work to try and throw in front of the runner. Whereas, let's say you have this situation and you hit it to third base, it's much easier to throw in front of the runner rather than trying to, come from behind and like throw in front of the runner that way, right? So your ideal hit is to the right side of the field, whether it's a line drive to the outfield or a ground ball in between first and second. Now, you want to try your best not to pop it up, all right, because they won't advance. And this is assuming the defense catches the ball, right? So if you pop it up, then they have to stay at the base. So the first base runner has to stay at first base, second on second. They have to stay there until the ball is caught. And even if they don't catch the ball, that still leaves the entire baseline where they would have to run. So there's still a potential to be out, right? So you want to try your best not to pop it up because that's kind of the worst situation. You want to at least get it on the ground, and preferably to the right side of the infield. And so the pitch that you're looking for. So you're looking for a pitch lower in the zone that you can drive. So obviously you don't want to swing at balls, but if you see anything higher in the zone where if there was no one on base, that might be a pitch that you might swing at. But thinking about your job with the runners on, you want to advance them to the next base, and swinging at a higher pitch has a higher likelihood of popping it up. So you don't want to do that. So look for low pitches that you can drive on the ground or even drive to the right side or like a line drive to the outfield. So when you have the forced play situations of runners on first and second or just first, then you're looking for low pitches that you can drive. Now, a runner on second or second and third, right? So there's nobody on first base. When there's no runner on first base, there is no force play. All right, that's a huge advantage to you as the hitter, or you and your team, is that there is no force play. The defense has to tag the runners in order for them to be out. These runners are in scoring position, which means scoring position means that they're able to score on one hit, which is your hit, right? So they are able to score in one hit. So if they're on third, one hit scores them. And most of the time, if they're on second, one hit, they can round third and come home, because if it's hit to the outfield has the furthest throw to home plate, right? So whenever you hear runners in the scoring position, that just means that they are able to score on one hit. All right. Your ideal hit is a high fly ball to the outfield or a right side ground ball. All right. And the reason for this is that a high fly ball to the outfield allows your teammates to tag. Right. So if you have a fly ball to the infield, they can't tag because that's a shorter throw. That's more likely for them to get out. Right. But if you have a high fly ball to the outfield then has to catch it. Your player tags or your teammate tags, and that's a far throw from the outfield to home plate to try to get them out. So when you hit the high fly ball to the outfield, your goal is for your teammates to tag up, and once the ball is caught, then they score, right? So a high fly ball to the outfield or a right side ground ball. Now, a ground ball anywhere is kind of fine, but preferably to the right side, because second base and first base have a further throw to home plate rather than like third and short, right? So, a right side ground ball is preferably through the infield, like a hit. But you're just trying to go away from where the hitters are running to, right? So if you go away rather than to, like if you hit it to the third baseman, it's a higher likelihood that your teammate will not run if it's to third base rather than to second base, right? So a right side ground ball or a high fly ball to the outfield will help your teammates score in a situation where there's no force play with runners on second base or second and third. All right. Now, the pitches you want to look for. You want to look for pitches middle or high in the zone to try drive to the outfield. So this is way different than if there was a force play, right? Runners on first and second. Now, you are trying to get them to score where they can tag up. That means a high fly ball. What's easier, which pitch location is easier to hit to the outfield, a higher or middle of the zone or higher in the zone, right? Where you can lift it into the outfield. So when you have runners on second and third, you're looking for kind of a middle to the zone, higher in the zone ball where you can drive it to the outfield, a high fly ball to the outfield, right? Or if you're looking for that ground ball to the right side, kind of like that outside pitch where you can drive it to the opposite field, right? And I just want to repeat, I understand that hitting a ball where you want is really hard. So this is like an ideal situation, right? So with bases loaded, there's a force play at every base. And most likely, as long as there's not two outs, the infield will be playing in because that gets them closer to the bases. And once they get the ball, they can kind of go anywhere, right? Most likely, especially if there's no outs or if there's a close game, they will most likely try to get the force out at home plate, which means that they will be playing in, right? Your goal is to hit the ball to the outfield in any way that you can, or at least past the infield. So, as I said, the infield is probably playing, if you play on a grass infield, then they're going to be playing at the edge of the grass, or they're just going to be playing like within the baselines, like in line with the baselines, whereas their normal positioning might be a little further back. They will be playing in because their goal is to get the out at home, the force play at home. And your job is to try and either just get it to the outfield in any way possible. right? Or at least hit a hard ground ball through the infield where it gets past the infield, right? That is your goal with bases loaded, to either lift it to the outfield in any way, all right? It could be a weak fly ball to like the shallow outfield, because remember that the infielders are playing in, so that's even a further run for them to go try and catch that ball. All right, so try to get to the outfield, or even try to get it through the infield in either in between third and short, or in between second and first. All right. Now, also remember, with bases loaded, a walk is a run. A walk is a run. If you walk, that person is scoring, right? So you have to think about that with bases loaded. Be disciplined. Think about your hot zones. So going back to, I did a video on hitting zones. If you would like to check that out, I can link it in the description. But hitting zones, you have your hot zone, you have your warm zone, and you have your cold zone. Hot zone is your balls that you really like. Warm zone, you kind of like, but you don't always swing. Cold zone, you really don't like to swing, right? Think about your hot zones, right? You only want to swing at your hot zones until you get 2 strikes. Because, like I said, if you don't want to give the pitcher any free stuff, right? And that's actually what I say in this next one is lay off bad pitches, because you don't want to give the pitcher free strikes or free outs. So be extra disciplined at the plate and have a good pitch selection when you have bases loaded, because a walk is a run, right? So think about your hot zones. If that ball is in your hot zone, then I'm crushing it to the outfield. And if it's not in that hot zone and I don't have 2 strikes, then I'm probably not going to swing, because I don't want to give that free out, or I don't want to, give the pitcher free strikes, right? So that's just something to think about with bases loaded, is that you just want to get it to the outfield, but you also want to have good discipline at the plate, so because a walk is a run with bases loaded. So this was a little shorter video, but I really wanted to kind of express that when you hit with runners on base, you have a job, and hitting with runners on base is different than if you come up to the plate with nobody on and the bases are empty, right? So this is just kind of a breakdown, a quick breakdown of how to think about hitting with runners on base, and think about your different jobs. Think about the pitch locations that you're looking for. Oh, I have a runner on first. My job is to get him to second base. I need to look for a low pitch that I can drive to the right side of the infield. Or I have bases loaded. My only job is to try and lift the ball to the outfield in any way that I can. Right? So just think about those different things, where every single time you come up to the plate, it is not just you're trying to hit the ball. If you're skilled enough and you can do it, you want to do different pitch locations, because different areas of the field that you're trying to hit will do different things with different situations of runners on base. So I really wanted to do that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I have 2 free starter packs down in the description. Feel free to grab it if you'd like. There's a coaching starter pack with a bunch of things, and there's a parent starter pack with a bunch of things that'll help your player, okay? So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I will see you in another video real soon.